Hello, everyone, and welcome to Developing a Powerful LinkedIn Profile. I'm delighted that you are joining me today. We've got lots of really great information to help you get that profile up and running if you're just starting or really work on improving it in lots of ways. My name is Dorothy Baumgartner, and I'm with the Career and Professional Development team here at WGU. Let's take a look at where we're going today. I want to do just an overview of LinkedIn and some statistics to demonstrate why it's such an important platform as part of your career journey. I will then spend some time about some strategies to help you optimize your LinkedIn for search engine optimization. Then we're going to do a walkthrough of all of the main sections of your LinkedIn profile and with lots of strategies and information about how you can enhance that. And we will also look at some, just briefly, touch on some of the lesser used sections, but I just want to make sure that you know that those are there and useful to you if they apply to your situation. We'll spend a few minutes talking about next steps. And then at the end, as time allows, we'll do Q&A. Again, I will do my best to try to monitor the chat as we go along. So jumping right in, I want to talk a little bit about why we pay as much attention to LinkedIn as we can. It's really a powerful platform. And so we just want to draw some attention to what you can do with it. And first, it is really your online presence to cultivate your personal and professional brand to personal and professional contacts and potential employers. It does give you an online public platform to share your brand widely and with people in your industry. It's also an opportunity for you to build your network connections. It's really the premier platform for professionals to connect virtually. So I'll share some data on that in just a moment that just shows how many people you can connect with. And again, with networking being such a critical job search, such a critical piece of your job search, LinkedIn is an important tool. So there's a huge opportunity in this space. You obviously can search for jobs and opportunities. And so there's new opportunities posted every day. LinkedIn, as I understand it from a backend developer on one feature of LinkedIn, LinkedIn's engine scrubs most of the other job boards. So it's a pretty comprehensive board. I wouldn't say don't look at those other ones, but you are getting pretty good look at what's available through the LinkedIn job search. The other thing you can do with LinkedIn is you can explore different industries and companies and career pathways. You may find out about job titles that you didn't know about. So there's all kinds of opportunity for doing research, not just for applying for jobs. I want to show you a little bit about some numbers about, again, why this is such a powerful platform. LinkedIn has over 1 billion members worldwide, and so it is truly an international platform. You can connect with companies and people around the globe if you have any interest in doing that. There are almost 60 million companies that are connected on LinkedIn. And then through something called the LinkedIn Alumni Tool, you can connect with WGU alumni who are in the kinds of roles that you aspire to. And actually, I think that number is closer to 300,000 now. It keeps going up. So WGU is sort of an interesting opportunity there over and against a lot of different higher education institutions because of the volume of alumni that we have linked with that page. And so it is a place where you can do research about what people who've graduated in the same degree program you have, what they are doing, what kind of titles they're in, what their career pathways look like. And it also gives you the opportunity to connect to them if you would like to do that. And this statistic is really important. It's actually over 94% of recruiters use LinkedIn at some point during the job search, some to find talent, to vet talent, and certainly to hire. So it's an important space to be in and to make sure that it aligns with the professional brand that you want to be projecting out there. So there is a LinkedIn recruiter tool that is on the back end of LinkedIn that we cannot see as users. It's hidden behind the scenes for job seekers, but recruiters have access to this. And so knowing a little bit about how that tool works can help you get the most out of your own profile for your job search. So this tool uses algorithms to rank your content in those recruiter searches. So the sections that are indexed first are your headline, your job title line in the experience section, and your skills section. You'll notice that there are some asterisks here on this slide for each one of those sections as we go through the rest of the presentation and are walking through those different LinkedIn sections, you'll notice those those asterisks. So we want to make sure we really emphasize those are 3 places you want to be sure that you have really used industry relevant keywords. You're going to hear me talk about keywords a lot from your target industry. So skills that are important for the role you're targeting and in your industry, any kind of transferable skills that you have if you are a career starter or a career changer, that you know from any kind of previous experience that you have, any certifications that you've earned that are really relevant to, again, those target jobs. And your target job title is important to include there. A lot of people think that they have to just, that their LinkedIn profile is their essentially online version of their resume and that it is reflecting a previous experience. But one of the things you want to think about as you approach your LinkedIn profile is that you want to write it toward your future. So it's a little bit different than your resume. Obviously, you are representing previous experience, but you really want to language it and frame it toward your future. I'll talk about that a little bit more as we get into specifically into the headline. I do have a couple of resources here. There's the LinkedIn Economic Graph and tool that we have here at WGU that you can use called Pathway U. Those are places where you can do you can find information about keywords that are really relevant to your industry. You can also look at other people's profiles who are in your field to get a sense about those. So you really want to be honing in those keywords. You can also look up job descriptions if you are, you know, currently starting to do that. Pull several job descriptions of the type of role that you are targeting and look at what are the keywords that are showing up in common across those. So you want to be sure that you are including those kinds of things in your profile. We're going to move into actually looking at those profiles. But first, I just want to make sure if you are new to LinkedIn, if you haven't been in this space before, I want to make sure you know how to do this editing. So up at the top where your, this is your, obviously your name, this is your headline. Then just below that, you'll see these buttons. If you click add profile section, that's how you add in these sections that we're going to be walking through. And then in every section, there's this little pencil icon from your view. And so if you click on that, that's how you get into the editing mode for each one of those sections. All right. Now we're going to start walking through all of those important features of your LinkedIn profile. One is a profile photo. So you'll see here you get 21 more views when you have and 9 times more connection requests when you have a profile photo. A lot of people haven't done that, and just think about it. If you've been on LinkedIn and if you looked at other people's profiles, if they don't have a photo, just pay attention to what your own reaction to that is. The same is true about the banner. We're going to talk about that on the next slide. But a photo draws people in and it makes a more personal kind of a connection. And so one of the strategies you can think about is reviewing photos of professionals that are in your target industry. How are they positioning themselves? You want to make sure that you are using appropriate attire for your industry. This checklist is important to think about. You really want it to be just you, focused on a nice headshot. Make sure it's your shoulders and above to make sure that your face is recognizable. You want to have a nice approachable appearance on your face, friendly smile if you can. Natural lighting is good. You don't necessarily need a professional photo for this. With the portrait mode on phones these days, you can get really good photos. You just want to pay attention to what's behind you, what your background is, what the lighting is like, and you want to be looking at the camera. So we do have a couple of resources that you may want to use, and I will drop those in the chat as well. PhotoFeeler and Snapper are some resources that you can use to get some feedback on your photo. If you like, you'll get objective feedback. You don't have to ask family and friends or colleagues necessarily and put them on the spot. This will give you a chance to get some objective feedback from other people in your industry. So make sure you have a good photo that projects the professional image that you want out there. Banner photo I mentioned, LinkedIn comes with a standard gray, it's kind of this gray color with some sort of light graphics on it, and it's very plain. Again, you have fewer profile views when you have that. Background draws you in, and it's also an opportunity to help establish your brand. You will stand out more to recruiters, and so what you want to be doing is thinking about some elements that are conveying something, an image about who you want to be within your industry. So there, again, we have some other resources here. Let me grab those for you. I'm going to stick those in the chat. These can help you find images and design a photo. And so, for example, on this one, this person has chosen to highlight their name again and what their role is. The image here conveys some of that, obviously, right? Social media marketing. And so that's a nice image that's immediately conveying something about Olivia Wilson. You can choose some photos and get some design ideas on these resources that I just stuck in there with Unsplash or Pixabay, and encourage you to spend some time being thoughtful about what it is that you want to project. Another quick note that I want to just touch on is your profile URL. LinkedIn gives you an automatic URL that has elements of your name and then usually a bunch of random numbers on the end. So it's kind of long and clunky. You can customize it so when you are on your profile, you'll notice to the right of the banner, there's this public profile URL. It's easy to do. You just click on that edit pencil and you can write your own. Usually, obviously, you want to have your name as included, and there are a couple tips around that. So one of the things is that if you have a common name and that URL is already taken, sometimes people add a couple of numbers on the end. So just some things to keep in mind. You want to stay away from 2 and 4 number combinations because those can get interpreted as birth year or age. And so you want to avoid those kinds of things, but you can add other kinds of descriptors that distinguish you, like MBA or pen tester or RN or teacher, for example. So you can be a little bit creative about how you want to convey your brand. Again, you're writing toward your future. So even if you're not in the role that you want to be in, you may want to use that kind of descriptor on your profile. And you want to use this wherever you can on your resume. It's very common to include your LinkedIn profile URL on your resume. That's a good idea. Again, remember how many of those recruiters are going to look for you there. You might as well make it easy for them to find you there. So that's the URL. And then I want to talk about the headline. You'll notice on this section, this is one of those asterisk sections. So this is the first section that is indexed in that LinkedIn recruiter algorithm that I was talking about in terms of your search engine optimization. So it is prioritized. It is also immediately visible in search results. The beginning of your headline shows up in any sort of list of search results. And so you want this to be a brief but pretty rich, packed snapshot of who you are and what you can offer, what you do. So again, you want to be aiming for a keyword-rich headline. A lot of people make the mistake of just putting a current or past position in as their headline. I cannot tell you how many students and alumni I've worked with at WEG who've said, like for example, I've been in sales for a long time, I want to get out of it, but that's all I'm hearing from on LinkedIn as sales recruiters, and we look at their headline and their headline says that they're in sales. So this is the place where you really want to be writing toward your future. I will show you some examples in the next slide about some ways that you can do that, but you want to be focused on your aspiration, your target job. And then you can stack it with information, skills, and certs, for example, and value propositions that are related to the career that you want. So starting with these questions, I think can be helpful instead of jumping into what are the specifics that I should put in, to spend a little time in reflection and think about what is my career target, what are the top skills in my industry or necessary certifications, what problems do I solve? Because that value proposition is also something that you can put in your headline. So let's look at some examples. The first thing I want to say is that we've got some sort of formulas up here, and there is nothing meaningful whatsoever about the symbols between these words. We just wanted to provide some samples for you to see how you can break up the text, because if you just have straight text running, it's with just commas or something like that, it's a little bit hard to read. So you can use dashes or these straight pipes or carets or double carets. So there's just some options for how you break up that text. But you want to be thinking about what is your target job title. You may be in a job that you are advancing in, and then it's fine to have your job title. Or you may want to have some sort of a job function if you don't have a specific job target title in mind, or if you're in an industry where there's a lot of different job titles for the kind of work that you do, you can focus on job functions like, visionary people leader or something like that. So here's some examples you'll see where this is a person who probably is in this kind of role, and then they're listing what they are some of their keywords, skills, and experiences that they have had. So they're listing those out, and here's a value proposition: safeguarding patient documentation to promote accurate and confidential healthcare data management. So that's telling them a lot about what they do, but it's also showing, demonstrating what your commitment and focus is. So here's, there's several different examples here. I'll let you read those. You're welcome to grab a screenshot if you want to. I do want to call your attention here to this one that says aspiring cybersecurity analyst. So you don't have to be in the role, but you want to make sure if that's the role you want to make sure that that language is in your headline. And so that is one way that you can do that. You can list the role and then industry or expertise and unique value, for example. So you might be saying director of HR at Microsoft, and industry expertise is software technology, and a unique value is that you're a certified HR trainer. You may be listing what kind of helping you do. For example, helping software startups manage and grow their social media to drive more sales. Or you might include a description of what you do or how you meet someone else's pain point, and then some keywords like I help manufacturers become more efficient through process engineering, GMP certified project manager, CQE, things like that. Or things that you're specializing in, content marketing strategist specializing in press releases, blog content, social media. Or you may want to start with years of experience. If you are really in an advancing kind of a role, X years of experience in Y, and helping companies with specific kind of outcomes. So there are lots of ways that you can approach this. I'd recommend that you look at examples of maybe WGO alum who graduated in the same program that you're in and are in those kinds of roles. How are they positioning themselves? I will say not all of those people went through this workshop. So there may be a lot of them out there that just say the job title, but you may get some good ideas in looking from some other people's profiles. Okay, I'm going to move next to the About section. You'll notice that this one does not have an asterisk on it, so this is not indexed in that recruiter algorithm. The recruiter algorithm indexes those sections to find talent. But the About section tends to be the #1 section that recruiters use, and a lot of people don't include this. So this is an important section because what this can do is help support statements that you've made in your headline, for example. Okay, so I have a couple more slides because there are different ways to approach this, but don't miss this section. Take advantage of this. You have 2,600 characters that you're allowed in the section to tell those recruiters more about yourself. So it's really, again, meant to support your headline and expand on your professional brand. Let's look at some options for how you do this in just a minute. Again, you want to personalize it by, you might describe your leadership style or some of the values or passions that you have. And again, over and over and over again, any kind of keywords and industry skills that are relevant to the role you're targeting. So how do you do this? How do you go about writing an About section? So one is you have some more flexibility on LinkedIn than you do in your resume. You can use a much more narrative style. Here, resumes are not narrative, and so you want to use third-person voice. You can be more personal on LinkedIn and use first person. So you're really kind of telling the story of you. You might want to find a hook to capture attention, to keep them reading. And you want to be thinking about 3 to 5 paragraphs. If it gets much longer than that, it can be hard to read with all that text. I mean, again, you have 2,600 characters. That doesn't mean that you necessarily need to use it. So you want to be complete but also concise. So some ways to think about this is maybe your opening paragraph is that catch. Like, what do you do? Why do you do it? What are you passionate about? What motivates you? What draws you to the field? So you might be motivated by helping others, for example, and you want to make that statement in the beginning, or you may be motivated by solving tech problems and include that. So that's the beginning of the story. The middle is where you are describing more content about your background, what kind of skills or certifications you possess. Transferable skills are really important here, especially if you are career changing. Let's say you are pivoting from teaching, going into IT, you maybe want to be talking about things like being adaptable in a dynamic environment, working on diverse teams, problem solving to meet specific needs, those kinds of things. So this is a great opportunity to highlight your transferable skills right near the top of your LinkedIn profile. And how do you achieve results? If you've got some examples of those, that's great to include too. And then your final paragraph may be something about where are you headed in your career? What kind of goals do you have? What kind of opportunities? Or maybe a call to action that might be, let's connect, or please message me, or something like that. So one of the things that's a little challenging on LinkedIn in this section is that there's not a lot of formatting flexibility here. So one of the things that you can do is think about using some section headers to break up those paragraphs. So for example, your opening paragraph might be titled by any of these kinds of things. What I do, what are my values, why a career in cybersecurity, what captivates or drives me. So any of those kinds of things or others that you may think of. Your middle paragraph or paragraphs, you may have more than one, you can break into these kinds of things that you want to highlight, the things that you want to call attention to and that relate to the role that you're targeting. And then your closing paragraph, again, as I mentioned before, maybe about your career goals or where you want to go, or some kind of a call to action. So 3 to 4 paragraphs. Sometimes if you have a lot of experience, 5 or so. Be cautious that it's not too text dense. You want to break that up visually, and that's why the separate paragraphs and the headers can be helpful for you. We're going to move to the next asterisk section, which is one of those that's indexed in that recruiter tool algorithm, and that's your experience section. So the titles that you've got in your experience, your job titles, are what's indexed there. So I'm going to just talk generally for a minute about your experience section, and then we'll talk about how you do some optimization. You want to really be focused on the last 10 to 15 years, and that is true for your resume as well. The caveat to that is if you have older experience that's really highly related to your target industry or target occupations, then it might be beneficial to keep it in your profile. But for the most part, the best practice really now is to represent 10 to 15 years, partly because older experience is becoming less relevant because of the pace of change in work and the change in technology, for example. So you want to be really focused on recent. The other thing is if you tend to be mid or later career person, there is that issue about lengthy work experiences on your resume and your LinkedIn profile. Age bias is an illegal thing, and recruiters admit that it happens all the time. So if you have a concern about that based on where you are in your career, that's another reason to perhaps consider not including all of those previous experiences. If you have less relevant experience, again, if you are a career changer, you may want to be really focusing on transferable skills and those kinds of accomplishment statements for what you did accomplish in your bullet points. Really try to talk about skills that are relevant in multiple situations, and it may be around things like analysis, attention to detail, communication, collaboration, those kinds of things. You may want to consider adding any relevant unpaid experience, like volunteer experience, or if you have an internship here at WGU, or clinical experiences. While you might normally think they go into volunteer experience because they're not paid, if they are really relevant to the kind of role that you are targeting, it's probably wise to consider including them in your experience section. So what gets indexed and how can you make some strategic choices about how to enhance that? So first of all, you want to start with your actual job title, and that's where people usually stop. But you have the opportunity to develop compound experience titles on your LinkedIn profile. So what does that mean? So for example, you may start with your you want to start with the actual job title, but then you can include some sort of separator. Again, these particular symbols don't mean anything specifically, but just to make it easier to read, and to designate that this is a break and you're saying something else. Then you can include other job roles or functions that you had within that title. I mean, let's face it, job titles are an interesting animal out there. Sometimes they don't necessarily represent what you do, or you are in a role where you've been given additional responsibility and that is not reflected in your job title. You can capture that in a compound experience title, job title in your experience section. So here's some examples. The official title was marketing associate, and you can add social media strategy if that was one of the roles that you held. Or you're an instructional designer, and one of the functions is that you're developing content. If your title is software engineer, you're focusing on, full stack, include that in your title so they know that. So you can also add additional keywords that represent main responsibilities. And you've got some examples here. So would really encourage you to think about how you can maximize this opportunity, because again, this is one of those sections that is indexed in their recruiter algorithm. It's going to help recruiters find you on LinkedIn. Couple of other things that you want to keep in mind in this section is you can, underneath your title, then add 1 or 2 sentence kind of job scope that's got responsibilities outlined in it. Similar to your resume, you want to be thinking about including something like 4 to 7 accomplishment statements. 3 to 4 is pretty common. Up to 7 is okay. If you get much more than that, it gets difficult to read, and that they tend to start skipping past things. But as you would do in your resume, you want to start with a strong action verb. You want to add numbers and metrics, examples of things or tools that you use when possible, and you want to be focused on sort of the so what behind the work that you did. How did it benefit your team, business, customers, etc., and including any sort of soft skills that you leverage as well. So you want to be thinking about this similar to your resume. Again, you have a little more flexibility in it. This is also an important way to demonstrate a lot of your skills. Okay, we've got a comment. I've generally left what's in LinkedIn a bit generic to allow me to custom tailor my resume for different positions. Is that wise? Yes, I mean, that's the challenge. Thanks for that question. That's the challenge in terms of what you put on your LinkedIn profile, because in resumes, you are really, I hope you are tailoring, customizing specifically to the job description. So you're mirroring the language of the job description and really highlighting your qualifications as they relate to that job description, maybe eliminating others if they don't relate to that job description. LinkedIn's just out there, and you're not going to change that every time you apply for a role. So yes, I think that is an appropriate strategy, as long as you're really speaking to your target, generally your target role territory, and then leave the specificity to your resume. Great question, actually. Thanks for that. Okay, we're going to pop to the education section. This is not indexed, but it is important in lots of roles. Obviously, there are degrees that are required. So here's just a couple of tips that you want to be thinking about. One is that you're only including post-secondary education, college and above. So high school is not needed or appropriate either in LinkedIn or your resume. You do generally want to add your graduation a year, because there are recruiters that are looking for new graduates in searches. Caveat to that is, again, if you have an older degree and you're back at WGU for a master's degree, for example, if that older degree was more than 10, 15 years ago, you may want to think about not listing the specific date. You can also, instead of just listing the degree, you can include other things. So you'll see here the things that are listed here on the slide about different kinds of accomplishments or areas of study or skills that you gained, etc. And here's an example here about how you can build out your degree to include more richer representation of the qualifications and skills that you did experience through your academic program. Finally, we are going to look at, well, it's not finally, but we are going to look now at that third asterisk section. So the skills section is the third one that gets pulled into that recruiter algorithm. So you want to be sure that you pay attention to this. And it's really easy to miss things here. So we're going to talk about a couple of tips. Again, you'll look at the number of profile views that increase. LinkedIn this calendar year increased to 100 skills. So if you've had a LinkedIn profile for a while, you know that the limit was 50, but it is now 100. So go back and revisit it if you haven't done that for a while. I'm going to show you a demo in just a minute, a live demo about how to do these things. You want to select your skills from the drop-down menu for search engine optimization, and you want to include skills that are spelled out and abbreviated if you can. I will show you that in just a minute so you know exactly what I mean. One of the things you want to also be paying attention to is that your 2 highest skills you want listed at the top, because that's what shows up on your profile summary. And just a quick note here, LinkedIn used to have skill assessments. They no longer do that because of trying to be able to sustain relevance and stay on top of industry standards. So the assessments are no longer available, but what they did add this year is that you can tag skills to any of the credentials that you obtained or previous jobs or experience that you have. So there's more skill traffic here, and that also has an implication. Just want to show you on the skills section again, this is the summary of the profile. So you'll see there are 2 that show up. So the top 2 skills in your list are going to show up on the summary. And so that's why you want to pay attention to the order. So here's the edit button. And this is how you add skills, this plus button. When you click that, it's going to suggest some things based on your profile. But let's say I want to add customer relationship management. This is what I mean by choosing something from this drop-down menu. That means it's already in the database for LinkedIn. And so that's to your advantage to use things that are already in there. If the skill is not in there, then you absolutely can type it in and save it as is. What I meant about including the spelled out version plus the abbreviated version, you would want to choose this one instead of just CRM or just customer relationship management, because that means that regardless of how the recruiter searches for it, you will show up in the search. So that's the one you would want to choose if you were adding that feature. So that's how you add skills. And then the other thing that I want to, excuse me, note here is this reorder section. So that's how you stay on top of this. Now, one of the things I want to say about this, so all you do here is grab and drag, and it will change the order of those. What I want to note about this is if you are adding or tagging skills, let's say you, one of the features in LinkedIn is that when you are looking for a job, if you start to explore, how qualified am I for this job, it may pull up some skills that you don't have in your profile that are required for that job and give you the opportunity to add them. I mean, sometimes we forget, oh yes, I did that thing and I'm familiar with, financial literacy or something like that. But if you add that, it's going to populate that at the top of your list. And so that's going to affect what shows up on your summary. So anytime you're adding a skill, please be sure to go back and make sure that your summary here is demonstrating what you are wanting to feature there. So that's skills. And we're going to move next briefly to licenses and certifications. These are things that you absolutely want to include as you earn them, because it is going to demonstrate that you are more competitive. It also demonstrates your commitment to personal growth, you want to continue your professional development throughout your career. So, in the future, try to remember to always come back and add those things as you're gaining them. And having said that, some people have a long list of certifications or licenses that they've gotten. And it is important, especially as you get later in your career, to make sure that these are really relevant to your target industry, because you don't want just a laundry list of a lot of those things. So keep it focused. The other thing that you can do is you can add the URL for the issuing agency, and that often boosts credibility. So if you've earned a certification somewhere, or you did a professional development opportunity, you can add that organization's URL. So you'll see here, these are the kinds of things you want to be including here. Obviously, any professional licenses or certifications in industry credentials, but you can also add LinkedIn Learning courses here. That's a good way to feature those, and any professional development certificates. Next section is one that gets underutilized a lot, and that is recommendations. So you'll see here that one of the things is you can say over and over in your profile and your resume and cover letters and whatever you do about all of the things that you're really skilled and experienced at. And it's another thing for another person to say that as well. So it does bolster your professional credibility if you've got recommendations on your profile. And so again, this is underutilized. There are a lot of profiles that we take a look at that don't have any. So I want to encourage you to start thinking about who might be appropriate for you to ask to do a recommendation for you. So Obviously, anybody, if you have previous work experience, prior managers or colleagues are great. You may want to be thinking about some of your faculty if you've got strong relationships with them and they know your work. If you've worked, again, people that you supervised or clients or vendors. I mean, it could be anyone really that you've had interaction who can create a strong statement of what you're trying to focus on. So, and that's part of the key. Is that you really want to be thinking about what you want represented and what you want those other voices to reinforce on your profile. So the way you do this is to think about what you want from a recommendation, think about who are the people that can provide that for you. And then it's important to let them know. And you do on LinkedIn, on the recommendation section, you can request a recommendation, and that's how you do that. You send them a message, ask if they're willing to do a recommendation. And if you do that, it is important to give them some guidelines. Like, what are the kinds of things that you would hope that they would focus on in their recommendation, because that's that's reinforcing some of the things that you're trying to highlight. So give them some guidelines. When I've been asked to do these or write recommendation letters, it's much easier for me when someone provides me with these are the kinds of things that I'm really hoping to emphasize, because then I really know what to focus on. And it helps remind me about things about those people that I, may have not thought of by myself. One thing that's really important about recommendations is we really want to emphasize the quality of them over the quantity. So this is not just we don't want to do sort of a scatter shot, everybody that you've ever known, ask them to do it. But really think about people who can make a clear and compelling statement about your qualifications and the value of your work. The other thing about this is just in terms of professional courtesy, it's also a good practice to offer to reciprocate if that's appropriate. To say, I'd be happy to provide a recommendation for you as well. Sometimes that makes it a little easier to get a yes on those. So that's something to keep in mind. The other thing is that if you're in a position, you can offer to do a recommendation for someone if it's somebody that you've worked with and you really have a lot of admiration for. Briefly, I want to just highlight that there are some additional sections. I am not going to go through these individually, but just to note that there's a featured section where you can showcase your work. Oh, also, just want to go back here. If you're not, if you're relatively new to LinkedIn, that's how you get to these, is underneath your picture and headline, you'll see these buttons. That's the add profile section here, and you can get to all of these different sections. I mentioned volunteer experience a little bit earlier when I was talking about your professional work experiences. If you have other volunteer experiences that don't relate to the job that you're targeting, it's great to put them in here because it just demonstrates that you are invested in your community, that you have other interests, that you like to learn and connect with people. Languages are always a good thing if you've got proficiency in languages. If there's particular projects that you've done that don't fit into your experience or your education, this may be a place where you can highlight some of those things. Certainly any kind of honors and awards that you have. If you've gotten awards from WGU, you may be including that to some degree under your educational experience, but this may be another place that you can feature those depending on what they are. If you've ever written anything, been published, please remember to put in here, and especially if it's related to the kind of career trajectory you're on. You can also list your courses or courses that you've taken elsewhere, additional professional development kind of courses, and any kind of organizations that you're affiliated with, especially professional development organizations that are affiliated with your career. So just wanted to highlight that these sections exist. A lot of people stop with the main ones that we've gone through, but there are some other opportunities that you may want to take advantage of here. Okay, just a couple more things here that I want to highlight. One is just a note about settings. We get a lot of questions about privacy, and you get to control that. So you'll see here, when you go to the settings on your profile, there is this visibility section. And if you click on that, it will give you some options here. So, who can see your last name? You may not want your last name to show up, so you can turn that off. You can edit what shows up on your public profile, for example. So you see this list of menu options here. I know that's a little bit small. I hope you can see that. But that gives you control about what's showing up on your LinkedIn profile. And you can change it when you need to. You can also change the setting that lets people know that you've viewed their profile and Sometimes if you are exploring career pathways, you might want to be a little under the radar. And other times you might be actively looking to network and want people to know that you're interested and you're active and you may want to connect. So you have control over that, and I want to encourage you to take a look at that to make sure that it's set with all of the, filters that you are comfortable with. Another thing we get asked about a lot is the open to work section. So that is this green bar circle up here at the top around your hopefully photograph. So that would show up right here on this section. And you can adjust that based on what your circumstances are and make choices about that. So you'll see here on this slide that this is again in the open to work section. You can choose recruiters only. And this is really tiny, and I know it's really light, so I'm sorry. You may not be able to read that, but this top button is you can choose for recruiters only, and you can choose for all LinkedIn members. Again, those settings on the prior slide determine what is visible there, but this makes the designation about who is able to see these things. So one of the things you want to be thinking about, obviously, lots of people who think about whether if you are currently employed, you may not want to have this on your profile. And I will say that if you choose recruiters only, LinkedIn tries very hard to maintain that and keep that from your current employer, but they cannot guarantee that it is completely screened from recruiters in your current employment. And so you just need to know that there may be that issue if you are currently employed and you list it that way. So some things to consider, though, is that if you do have that highlighted, your spotlight, if you do have that visible to recruiters, you are spotlighted in that LinkedIn recruiter tool that I've been talking about if you're open to work. And recruiters do say, that they are more likely to reach out to somebody who's got the open to work button because it's a matter of time and efficiency for them. If they're reaching out to a lot of people that don't have the open to work designation, they may get lots of non-responses. But if you signal that you're open to work, that's worth their time. So just some things to consider. Where you land on the balance of those things is, what will make the determination of how you want to flag this. Okay, just one other quick note, not particularly related to this slide, but if you ever see LinkedIn member on when you're looking at profiles instead of somebody's name, it's because they're outside of your network. So LinkedIn has 3 layers of network connections. You'll see first, second, and third. Anyone who's outside of that won't be visible to you. So one of the strategies is to keep increasing your network connections because you'll see less and less of that as you grow your network. Now, just another quick comment on that. It used to be unlimited, the number of people that you could reach out to personally, and LinkedIn has capped that now at 5 personalized connection requests this year. When you connect with somebody, as maybe you did in the chat earlier today, you are clicking accept and you're not writing a personal message, that doesn't count in the 5. And I believe that those are still unlimited. So if you're connecting to people that you already know, you don't necessarily need to send them a personalized message. But if you are sending personalized messages, they are limited to 5 a month at this point. So, but again, I want to really encourage you to think about growing your network as much as possible because again, that networking activity is really critical to successful job searches. So I'm going to just take a minute before we close out today and talk about some next steps. One is the more clearly you can identify your target industry or occupation, the easier it is going to be able to craft both your LinkedIn profile and your resume. I realize that's not always possible. So going back to that headline, if you're clear about it, find a way to include the language of that target occupation, even if you haven't had the experience. Again, you can use aspiring in there to get that in there. If you are less clear about that, then the kind of skills and value propositions may be the way to really frame your material so that you are including as many keywords as you can in the field in which you are heading. Again, I wanted to call your attention, number 3 here, back to those other LinkedIn workshops that I mentioned at the beginning of this workshop, personal branding, networking, and job search. We're doing networking next week. I don't have the personal branding and job search off the top of my head, but you can look in Handshake to see when those are coming up. Then I want to let you know that we do have I mentioned we do a review service. And so after you have used this information that we walked through today, you are welcome to send it in to request a review from our team. The way you do that is you attach your URL to an email addressed to careers@wgu.edu. That's the same email that I noted in the beginning, and we'll be happy to do a review for you. One more thing I want to do is ask you right now to think about, based on what you learned today, what is one step that you will commit to taking in the next week, in the next 7 days, to develop your LinkedIn profile. Small steps are great. And the reason I'm encouraging you to do this, and I want to encourage you to put this in the chat, is that there's lots of research that says when you make a commitment to something and you speak it out loud, so this, in this setting in the chat, you are more likely to follow through with it. So I want to encourage you to think about one step that you're going to take this next week to get started on in improving your, building your LinkedIn profile. All right, we've got some things coming in. We've got a couple of about sections. Banner photo, that's great. Updating photo and rearranging skills, excellent. Overall review, great. You just finished your last course, congratulations. Skills about and key, great. About and keywords, that's great. Another thing you may want to consider doing based on what you dropped in the chat is take a Post-it note, stick it on your computer to remind yourself by next Tuesday to have done these things that you've shared with the rest of it. And I do see a question that I want to jump back to, repeating the list of algorithm activities. The 3 sections that get indexed first in the LinkedIn Recruiter algorithm are your headline, your experience job titles, and the skills section. Those are the 3 that you really want to make sure are optimized for your, increase your search engine optimization. All right, just really quickly, want to make sure you know how to get in touch with us. We've got a variety of ways here. Again, here's that email that I mentioned to you before. And we do have a message line that you can take advantage of. If you have a quick question, you can call this number. It's a message line. You leave your name and as detailed a message as you can, please. We'll do our best to try to get back to you within 4 business hours, as long as you've left a message by 2 p.m. Mountain Time. We also have some drop-in hours, if you haven't seen those yet, where you registered for this workshop in Handshake. There are a series of drop-in hours. Some of them are topic focused, like drop-ins for resumes. Some of them are general. Some of them are for interviewing prep. So that's a quick way to get in touch with us, and that's like walking into a career center and asking a question and leaving. Those aren't generally presentations. That's just trying to increase access to career advisors. Thanks for coming. I appreciate the feedback. You are very welcome. It was good to be with you today. Please don't be a stranger. You can get in touch with us through these ways of contact. It was great to have you here. Good luck with those LinkedIn profiles, and don't be a stranger. Let us know if you need some additional assistance.